Alaskans, wherever you are, welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Welcome, everybody, to the Must Read Alaska Show. I'm your host, John Quick, coming to you live from somewhere in Alaska. Hope everybody's having an awesome summer so far. It's a little rainy out there, but I know all of our lawns could use a little rain. If you listen, watch, or read Must Read Alaska and you want to help keep the lights on, just go to mustreadalaska.com on the right-hand side. There's a little donate button. Every $5, $10, $100 helps keep the lights on here at Must Read Alaska. If you want to sponsor the Must Read Alaska Show, just email me, John, John, at mustreadalaska.com. We have a very special guest today, Gretchen Guess, who's the new president and CEO of the Rasmuson Foundation. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me to be on your show.
Well, this would be awesome hearing a little bit about your story, your new role, and kind of what the Rasmuson Foundation is, future plans are. But first, take me back to how did you become the new president and CEO of the Rasmuson Foundation, and a little bit about your background. You have a great background here in Alaska.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was born and raised in Alaska, East Anchorage kid. My parents came up at statehood, and I've boomeranged a few times. And I was in healthcare the last 15 years. And before that, I was in the legislature representing Northeast Anchorage. And so I've got a varied background. And honestly, I saw the opening. I was in healthcare in the lower 48 and I applied and went through the process. Nothing more than just your typical, well, that would be really cool. Let me see if what I bring to the table fits with where the board wanted to go. And so it worked out. I got to come home and I've got the best job in the world. Except that, oh, there you go. John's back.
There you go. You can keep going. I'll just cut that part out.
That's okay. No, I had finished, but you had frozen. So I was kind of.
So you've been an elected official before. How do you think that sets you up for this kind of a role?
Yeah, it's a great question. Honestly, I think what set me up the most is the joy of service, is really wanting to wake up every day and serve Alaska. And when you're a public official, you get that joy. And it's not a joy that many jobs honestly bring. And so one of the things that interests me, not necessarily, I mean, I'm interested in philanthropy, but it was more being able to give back to Alaska that drew me to the job. It's also helpful when you've been in the legislature or in a seat where you can learn all about Alaska. I mean, you know your district well, but then you go down to junior, you've got all these different bills in front of you. So it's been helpful that even though I grew up here and I understand Alaska, so, there's so much to it. It's been helpful that I just had a deeper understanding of Alaska.
That's awesome. So I think, one of the things that I saw that the Rasmussen Foundation did, and they may have done this right before you became the new CEO or shortly thereafter, is you kind of put a little pause on everything. Talk to me about that a little bit, and maybe my guess is to maybe do some strategic planning. How did that go?
Yeah, it went well. That was within my first 5 or 6 months. I'm thankful that the board trusted me and my team. When I came in, we were just behind on a lot of things. We hadn't been able to reflect on our grant making and how we could make it better for Alaskans. And as I talked to my team, their feedback was it's really hard to make these improvements when we're going so quickly. So I went to the board, and we call it our core programs. Not all of our grant making paused, but our core programs paused. And it really gave my program group the ability to reflect on this great work that we do, and how can we make it even better? How can we make it easier? Um, for our grantees, for our partners? How can we make it easier on staff? So hopefully in, let's say, 9 days, we launch our new applications, and with the goal of making it easier, getting the information we need, but not necessarily getting more than that. People don't understand always that what funders, grant applications can be really complicated, and that can be a barrier to funding. And so the team worked really hard on just how can we make it easier on Alaskans to apply for funds.
That's awesome. So people are going to be listening to this and think, man, it'd be awesome if my nonprofit or something I'm involved in could, potentially be a good fit here. What is the typical grantee look like here in Alaska? Is this a well-established nonprofit that's got to have 70 years in the community? Is it new nonprofits? Is it everything in between? Kind of what is the typical person look like?
The great thing about the Rasmuson Foundation, it was started by Jenny Olson almost 70 years ago to give back to the state that had given her and EA so much. And then Elmer funded it even more when he sold National Bank of Alaska to Wells Fargo. And it really is a very Alaskan foundation in its heart. We fund Alaska. That you don't have to be well established. We have eligibility that you need to be up and running for a year, and our team does due diligence. We look at leadership, we look at impact, we look at what you want to do. But the board and the family really has said we want to be responsive to Alaska's needs. So one of the places we're going to be really leaning into in the next 3 years, one of our priorities is to be accessible. You don't have to have a grant writer on staff. It doesn't need to be a big $5 million project. Our greatest impacts oftentimes are what we call our tier 1 grants, or under $35,000 grants. It's fixing the SPCA mobile unit, right? So it can go out and spay and neuter dogs all over Alaska. I mean, that's not this big multi-million-dollar grant, but that has huge impact on services within Alaska. So the best thing to do is to go online to our bookings.com, talk to a PO, or when the applications open up in 9 days, especially in those smaller grants, go in and submit an application. Again, we're a very Alaskan foundation, so we return all our phone calls. We talk to folks, and we want to be accessible. And if we're not going to provide funding, for people to understand why and what they may need to do differently.
Nice. So there's also going to be folks, maybe been living under a rock for the last 30 years and haven't heard of Rasmuson Foundation, right?
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about the history behind it, because it is rooted in Alaska. I think folks will be interested to hear.
Yeah, it has just wonderful history. Jenny Olson, who immigrated to Yakutat as a Swedish missionary, and met her husband EA, who came a few years later, also immigrated as a missionary in Yakutat. And really through their public service, he ended up running the bank. And that's how the Rasmussens got into banking. And so you see through our history just this giving back service mentality. And so when EA passed away, his widow Jenny and his son Elmer started the foundation. She put money into it. And then when she passed, her little estate went into it, and it was a fairly small foundation until the late 1990s. late 1990s, around 2000, when Elmer and Ed Rasmussen, who had built the National Bank of Alaska, sold it to Wells Fargo, and Elmer gave his proceeds to the foundation, and that's when it went from a small foundation to a top 100 in the nation foundation. But all rooted in service in Alaska. One of the stories I love about EA, Elmer's father, was that he didn't ask for collateral when he gave bank loans. It was all about the leader. It was all about the person, right? And that's just so Alaskan, right? It's just like this helping others. Elmer's got this great quote that we use here: helping others is an Alaskan tradition. And all of us Alaskans know that. Doesn't matter, right? You stop on the side of the road and you help someone. You shovel someone's sidewalk when they can't, all those things that us Alaskans do. And so it's really rooted in the family's values, and really Jenny and Elmer and Ed's values.
So what's it like for you to kind of carry the weight of this? Because this is I think it's the biggest foundation in Alaska. I may be wrong on that fact, but I think it's got to be the biggest or one of the biggest. It's a huge responsibility. It's millions and millions of dollars. How do you, as a leader, carry this? It's a big responsibility.
Yes, we are. There's not a lot of foundations in Alaska. There's some in lower 48 foundations that fund in Alaska, but not that are in Alaska. There's a handful of us. For me, I get very rooted in our story and our values, in what it means to be an Alaskan, which is how we treat each other. So even if we have to say no to someone, we can do it respectfully. We can do it with grace and kindness. We can help them out and say, hey, next time. Or there's a different funding source that might be helpful to you. So I try not to get caught up too much in the enormity. We are able to give $20 to $25 million away a year, which is a lot of money. Yet it can't fit all needs. We can't solve everything. So I kind of carry the burden in how are we acting? Are we accessible? Are we treating people the way, we were reared to treat people? And I think, focusing on that, and then the decisions will come. We have to make difficult decisions, and those are hard. They're hard on me. They're hard on the staff. They're hard on the board. But we know we can have great impact, and that's where we're focused.
That's awesome. So I know you're going to be rolling out some new stuff soon. Is there anything you can share with us that's kind of going to be some new priority initiatives?
Yeah. It's funny. I tried to get the board to prioritize some things a handful of times in the last year, and I pretty much got the no thank you. We were still the board and the family is all about, Alaskans, us walking beside Alaskans and being responsive to their needs. We are trying to, as I mentioned earlier, trying to make things easier on Alaskans. So hopefully people will find the applications easier, and our processes. We have a couple new grant processes. One for kind of 35,000 to 250 that you can get more frequently. Our board only meets twice a year, so sometimes it takes a long time, right, to get a decision. We were able to speed up that timeline for certain projects. We're being transparent that we are a capital funder, but we also will consider programmatic funding, and have a path for that now. So a lot of it is what we've always done, hopefully improved and easier on Alaskans. And what I would say is, if people listening to this go and it still isn't, please email us and tell us. We want to be continuously being responsive to the community.
So you get a unique opportunity to meet with leaders all over Alaska. hear their stories, what's happening in their communities. Are you hopeful for Alaska, their future? You think there's sunnier days ahead?
I always do, but I'm kind of that way. And again, I was born in the 60s in Alaska, so I've been through a few, a few difficult times, but what makes Alaska special is the people, and that's not going to change. So I think and we go out in communities. Last week I was in Naknek, out in Bristol Bay. And you meet just these wonderful leaders, and everyone cares about each other and they care about their community. And as long as we have that, Alaska's going to be okay.
So tell me a story about one of your favorite folks that got a grant. I think
Uh,
it's always fun to highlight those kinds of stories. Do you have a favorite one?
it's almost like asking you if you have a favorite child. The one that sticks with me was the first. I get to approve certain grants. Not everything goes to the board, and I remember signing off on my first grant, and it was an accessible playground in the Matsu. It was going to be the first one. And I just thought about all the people that don't have access to a playground, that don't have access to a park because it's not accessible to them, right? To me, it still gives me chills. Um, not a lot of money in the big scheme of things, but such impact to how people can enjoy the outdoors, how they can enjoy each other, how they can feel part of a community. So that one is the one that's kind of close to my heart because it was my first grant.
That's awesome. So 20 minutes here has gone by in a flash. I really appreciate your time. Do you have any last minute thoughts here before we head off? The floor is yours.
No, just ask everyone to be in touch and give us feedback. We're here to serve Alaska.
Awesome. Well, folks, that was Gretchen Guess, the new CEO of the Rasmuson Foundation. I'll put all the links in the podcast description for you folks that listen to go check it out. We thank you for joining us here. For folks that listen, watch, and read Must Read Alaska, if you want to help keep the lights on, just go to mustreadalaska.com. On the right-hand side, there's a little donate button. Every $5, $10, $100 helps keep the lights on here at Must Read Alaska. If you want to sponsor the Must Read Alaska show, just email me, John, John, at mustreadalaska.com. We hope everybody has a phenomenal rest of their day. Hope you're gearing up for school to start soon. Until next time, I'm John Quick from somewhere in Alaska. Thanks so much.